Hello, all. Thank you for joining. Should be starting in about 30 seconds. Just waiting for a few more people to join. Okay. All right. So we are going to talk about three things today. Okay. As you can see on the screen, the first one is going to be the flashcard about minimal marketable feature. I'll talk about that for about 5 minutes. Then we'll go on to feedback techniques. Spend some time there. And then we will talk about what is the essence of knowledge sharing in Agile. Okay. Towards the end, as usual, we will test our knowledge. There'll be some questions, and you can see how much you learned today. And if you have any questions pertaining to any of these topics while we are going through, just feel free to ask in the questions box that you see in the GTM, and I'll try to get to them, when it is appropriate. Okay, so let's talk about minimal marketable feature first. Okay, it is something that is again very specific to Agile. Okay, by definition, there's a lot of vernacular on the page, but I'm just gonna read parts of it, and then we'll uh, explain what it is. Okay, so let me get a pen. All right. So an MMF is a feature that is minimal, because if it was any smaller, it would not be marketable. Okay, an MMF is marketable because when it is released as a part of product, people would use it or buy it. Okay, so this is very key. Um, you're trying to identify things that are marketable. Okay, and those of you who remember from our um, previous sessions, so we organize ourselves in terms of stories and epics and themes. Okay, another way of organizing, another way of looking at it from a commercial standpoint is, what is that bunch of stories, or what is that bunch of features that form um, that 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 form a collection that is sellable. Okay, so not every time you're adding value to your product makes it sellable. Okay, you may be adding value on an incremental basis in every iteration, every week. It does not always translate into hard dollars. Okay, in terms of marketing. Okay, so what you're trying to identify is the collection of those features, or collection of those functionality that is sellable. Somebody would pay for it. Okay, so another way of looking at it is, an MMF is different than a typical user story. Okay, multiple user story might be coalesced to form a single marketable feature. Okay, so MMFs are a little bigger. Um, it's there are organizations which use it. There are organizations which do not use it. It's really up to your discretion whether what is your how your marketing, your sales and marketing approaches the customers. Okay, so we essentially we talk about in terms of products when we are talking about Agile and uh, stories and MMFs. So if this is something, this organization is something that is really loved by sales and marketing people. Okay, what they really want to know, they don't want to see graphs of how much we are burning up, how much we are burning down. They don't want to see how the releases are planned. They don't want to see what the milestones are. They may care about all those things a little bit, but what they most care about is what is that is built in this in the product, um, that is sellable. Okay, so in order to satisfy that perspective, you may want to use MMF. Okay, we have been using it in the organization that I'm working. We have been using it for about an year now, and we've had some really good success with that. It's not always easy. I mean, there's always some maintenance cost to it, from the product side, from the engineering side. But if it is done efficiently, it is very, very useful. Okay, so those of you who have started working in an agile workshops already, and started organizing your features and stories and epics and themes, this is another orthogonal way of organizing your story and really help your marketing and sales team. Okay, it really helps translating what you're building, the value that you're building, into dollars. Okay, so this is about MMF. All right, let's talk about feedback techniques. um, Feedback techniques, it's not, they have been there forever. It's how we look at the feedback techniques in from an agile perspective. There are various things that are available for feedback, but these four things are essentially the core of of things in agile. Okay, one thing, even before we start looking at these feedback techniques, I think we all appreciate the fact that agile is so successful and provides a high quality of deliverables and flexibility is all because we have room to take feedback and room to incorporate that feedback. Okay, so there's, if you remember that feedback loops in XP, okay, that there's feedback coming from every level. Okay, that is really the strength of agile. And the fact that you're trying to exploit on that strength. Okay, so all the feedbacks that you're taking, it's important that you're using the right technique, and you are aware that this feedback, how it fits into the whole agile model, right? So with that thought, let's look at what are different feedback techniques that are most prevalent, and how they fit into this whole realm of agile development. So let's say, in general, you have these three category of resources that are working on a particular product. Okay, so you have development folks, which are engineers who actually work on the stories, do sprint planning. They do development, they do delivery. They are the ones who are responsible for coding standards, metaphors, pair programming, small releases, um, you know anything that is pertaining to the technical side of a particular project. Okay, and then you have the product management. Okay, which is responsible for all the analysis. Okay, writing stories. Okay, planning releases, understanding the product roadmap or building the product roadmap, keeping the vision of the company and product in mind. Okay, so they are the ones who actually, who understand the functional side. Okay, and they work very closely with the engineering or development side. And then you have a third category, which is the actual end user or the customer, people who are actually going to pay for it. Okay, who have a vested interest in the success of the product that uh, the product management and the development is trying to build. So with these three buckets, most of the resources in any project or product will fall in any, these three buckets. Okay. Yes, there are architects, there are there may also be project managers. Okay. There could be, there are, there could be more stakeholders. Okay. But these are the hardcore stakeholders. Most of those stakeholders may fall in one of these three buckets. Okay. So for, QA engineers, they fall in the development bucket. Okay. So it's important that the feedback happens pretty seamlessly and most efficiently in between these three, between these three categories. One thing that is missing in this diagram is that there could also be a feedback directly from customer to development. Okay, which is, I'm a very big fan of that. There can be a feedback that way as well. Okay, it doesn't mean that they're bypassing the product management, but it means that there's an open channel. It's like a three-way communication that is happening between product development and customer. Okay, this diagram shows it in a way that, that it happens, there are walls between, uh, between development and customer. Okay, it is not always true. It's, if you, the more agility that you achieve, you will see that these walls, they come down. Okay, and there's much more, um, seamless communication even between customer and development. Okay, so let's come back to the feedback techniques now. Prototyping. Okay, so I'm sure all of you are aware of it. It's, when we talk about POC, proof of concept, um, you know, it's the same thing as prototyping. What you're trying to do is you are building, you know, a simple, a simple, uh, self-contained program or, um, a product that is able to, that which you can evaluate in terms of, whether it is going to satisfy your customer needs or not. Okay, so this prototyping, mostly it happens at the development level. Okay, so when you're trying to build something that you are not completely aware of, or you have not done it before, you have you have a design, it looks good in theory, it looks, good on paper, but you are not entirely sure what kind of problems that you may run into if you have to, build that thing end to end. So what you do is you try to build something that at a smaller scale, see how it looks like, if it gives a good feeling to both product management and to customers. So this is a great time. Prototypes, they are not only just, used by the product management, they're also used for customer feedback. Okay, so when Apple decided to create an iPhone, they did not just start producing whatever that they designed on a massive scale. They did a design, that they had a blueprint, they implemented something on a smaller scale, they created just one iPhone, and they they may have done multiple iterations on that one software itself, on that one piece of hardware. And when it looked good, then they must have frozen the design at that time and then gone into mass production. Okay, and in between they must have taken feedback from their alpha, users, from their beta customers. Okay, so that this is a standard technique, uh, very useful, especially when we are working closely with customers, and you're trying to build, a product that uh, uh, requires, a lot of feedback from both product management and customer. Then you have simulation. Okay, simulation is another, great way of, taking feedback, and this technique is also used by, all, development, product management, and customer. Okay, customers sometimes they want to explain what they're looking for. Okay, what is the behavior that they expect from our product. Okay, it is sometimes not trivial to uh, write it down in terms of words or sometimes even pictures. What they would want to do is they want to have simulation of various scenarios, okay, and then display or show what the behavior is. Okay, it does not mean that you have all the business logic built in, all that in your system. What it means is that you're trying to show how a particular scenario would get simulated. Could be a combination of a lot of scenarios that will result in one condition, and how that condition is important in terms of behavior that you're expecting. Okay, so unless you're able to simulate and show that this condition is possible and it can be reached by a combination of these scenarios, uh, it's it's something that it makes it easier to understand from the for the product management, makes it easier to understand the development, and it can happen in the reverse way too. Okay, it's something that it's possible that the customer may context that may protest that a particular situation is not possible, particular scenario is not possible. In that case, you can also show some kind of a simulation that it is possible, and they should worry about that when they are doing implementation, which is why you may have to write a particular epic or a theme or a particular story. Okay, so it's important to take that into consideration. Now what happens is, so simulation is one of those important techniques that is very, very useful, especially at the time of inception, when you're trying to get the most feedback from the customer. Okay. Okay, the next one is demonstration. So demonstration is another, or demo, showcasing. There are so many different ways of explaining that. It's I think it's we all know very well what it is. Okay, demos, they go on in all all realms. Okay, whether it is development, product, customer. A good example of a demo is, if you remember, acceptance test driven development. Okay, where first there's when a story is being written, it is discussed between customer, product, and development. The acceptance criteria is defined. The distill phase, where you automate the test cases, or you expand the acceptance criteria into test cases, and then you do development, where you do all test driven development, do testing, you do all sorts of good, everything that is pertaining to the implementation. And once you think that you are done, you do a demo to the product management and customer of that story. Okay, so which is the acceptance test driven development cycle. Okay, so that is a great example of demo, because you're getting feedback by doing that demo. Okay, the whole idea behind that demo is not to just show that you have achieved what you have committed. It is the idea is twofold. Okay, one is to show that you have achieved and show it on in a working, breathing system. Also, get the feedback. Okay, there could be a lot of things, there could be some assumptions that you may have taken in that whole cycle. There may have been certain changes that may have been needed from what was originally discussed. So in that demo, you are showing what you have really produced, and does it match with what was originally expected by the customer. Okay, a lot of times what happens is that sometimes the cycle is long in acceptance test driven development. By the time you finish the development, the requirements may have become a little obsolete, or they may have become they the client may have not communicated everything that was needed, or they may have discovered something later on after the discussion happened initially, when the acceptance criteria was written. Okay, so it's a great time to get that feedback from the client. Imagine if you were doing 1,000 stories, and you did not go back to the customer until all thousand of them they were finished. Never did a demo of individual stories. You will go back and you'll realize that 500 of those stories may not be useful for the client, may not be adding any value, because you took a very long time to implement everything, to swallow the whole thing. And now you're doing a demo at the very end. It may have taken you 6 months or a year to build all those stories. And by that time so many things have changed that half of your work requires some sort of rework. Okay, imagine the kind of cost that you're going to incur at that time. Okay, which is why demo is very useful, not just between development and customer, not just between development and product, but all around. Okay, the more sometimes demo has a negative connotation, that every time there's a demo is kind of waste of time, or it's going to it's something that is not very useful. uh, from agile point of view, it is the whole essence of demo is to take really good feedback from the right audience. Okay, and the last technique here is the evaluation. Okay, so evaluation is another way of um, uh, y- y- you know when you have multiple options. Okay, so from the development side, we evaluate software or frameworks or techniques all the time. So it's a very good way of taking feedback as well. Okay, when you have multiple options, you can go for um, you can, especially if you have created multiple prototypes. Okay, so you have prototype A, B, and C. You'll have to, at some point in time, you'll have to do some kind of evaluation. Okay, which one is the one which has almost everything or everything that is needed. Okay, so that evaluation is again a feedback technique. Okay, what you're trying to do is you create a criteria. Okay, what is a criteria that is important to you? Okay, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? What is your audience? What are the customers you're trying to satisfy, and what is important to them? Okay, and you go with a very uh, objective way of calculating. Uh, what is between the options available, what is the best of them all. Okay, and that is true evaluation. So evaluation, it is not just a gut feeling evaluation. It is not just a it is it is not something that is dictated by the management or team of architects. It is something that is very objective. Okay, so that is very important from the agile point of view. The evaluation should be very objective. Okay, so this is about the feedback techniques. I see that there are some questions already. um, how is prototyping different than simulation? Okay, so all right, so prototyping is something that is mostly you have to do some proof of concept. You have a design that looks good on paper. You have not but because you're doing it for the first time, there may be some inexperience in the team, there may be some doubts, there may be some impediments that you see along the way in implementing some technology gaps, or some things that you are uncertain about. So what you do is you take a little bit of spike. So you take some time off, uh, and you create something that inculcates that in which you are able to inculcate more confidence. Whatever that you designed on paper, you have a proof that it works. Okay, that is prototyping. Okay, so proof of concept. Simulation is just a way of arriving at a condition. Okay, you don't have to have a fully baked breathing system behind it, but you can do a simulation with a combination of certain conditions that lead to the one condition that you care about. And how what is the behavior that is expected, what is the actual behavior, or and what is the expected behavior. So it's a way of arriving at that condition, okay, or creating conditions so that you can arrive or show a particular scenario. Okay, another question regarding evaluation. So evaluations, you'll see most of the evaluations, they're more in the development side, okay, wherever you have multiple options, especially when you're doing some designing, architecting. You have multiple options. You have to be very objective in choosing one. So by doing that evaluation, you for product companies, what you do is let's say you create a product. Your company produces product A, but your customer would want to evaluate between your competition as well. So product A is what you produce, product B is something produced by your competition. Okay, so they'll have to do some kind of evaluation. Okay, so having a comparison done between two products which are trying to achieve the same goal for a customer is a great way of giving feedback. Okay, all right, let's move on to knowledge sharing. Okay, so this is the last topic for today. Okay, so third agenda item here. Okay, but it's pretty comprehensive. I'm not going to go into too deep into everything that is there in Agile for knowledge sharing. We'll touch upon the high level things. Okay, 4 or 5 high level. But before we do that, okay, there are certain things that are rudimentary to Agile, and especially in terms of software development. Okay, so when we talk about software development, it's by definition it is a collaborative process that needs to bring together domain expertise and the technological skills, okay, and process knowledge. Okay, so you bring three things. Okay, so there's a domain expertise, which is a functional, technological skills, which is technical skills, and then the process. Okay, just all those checks and balances. Okay, that brings the order to the whole exercise. Right. So this is software development. Okay, now, in order to do that, traditionally, what happens is that you have a customer. Customer talks to the analysts. Okay, these are the functional experts. The analysts talk to the architects. The architects are the senior people who understand the system at the enterprise level. They understand technology. They understand how things are wired together, how systems are talking to each other. Okay, they also know the non-functional things. Okay, you're trying to build functional stuff, but you have to have there are non-functional requirements as well, which are not completely understood by the analyst. Okay, so analysts talk to the architects. Architect then talk to designers. Okay, communicate that same as customer is giving you specifications. Let's say, okay, the analyst gives those specifications to architects. Architects add their non-functional requirements to it, give it to the designers, and the designers are the low level designers. Okay, so they're doing class level design, they're doing sequencing of the all those things. Okay, the designers then go to chief programmer or tech leads. Okay, chief programmers are the ones who have the teams, who have the resources, who can do testing, development, um, deployment, and all those kind of things. So the leads then they talk to the actual programmer who actually is trying to code what the customer had requested. Okay. Now, if you consider a small amount of communication error at every level here, okay, let's say 5% communication error, there's always some noise that is introduced when there's a when you're exchanging information. So okay, so only 77, this is assuming a low communication error. Okay, only 77% of the information gets to the coder. Okay, And if you consider a more practical communication error, which is 10%, okay, um, that means only 59% of the information actually percolates down to the coder who's actually doing the implementation, that is of value to the customer. So what it means is, because of all this chain, you have lost more than 40% of the value just because of the way your communication is set up. And this is the traditional way of uh, executing projects or producing product. Okay, it's possible that in your chain there may be one or two roles that may be missing, but the whole point is there are a lot of hands through which knowledge is getting percolated down to the actual programmer. Okay. And this is not unusual. Okay, these are true figures. These are not just things that are made up, but in you know there have been surveys and research that is done on why we have low satisfaction with the customer, or what are the problems that the customers have in the traditional way of executing. Okay, I'm hearing that there's some problem with the mic. Okay, so must have been some problem with the internet. Okay, so all right. So the whole essence of this slide is that there are there are boundaries that the information has to cross, and because of that, we are losing a lot of value just because of the communication. Okay. Agile is very big, very very big on communication. Okay, it's one of the very very solid grounds for any projects to be successful. Okay, if the communication breaks down, there's no way. I mean, you can have the best processes, you can have the best people, you can have the best talent, all the skills that you need, and still that project is going to fail. Now, knowledge sharing with agility. Okay, so what is the difference? How does agile helps it? How we can achieve more agility? How can overcome this problem? Okay, it's very simple. You just make customer talk directly to the developer. Okay, sounds very simple, and it's definitely easier said than done. A lot of people argue that developers do not have the ability to talk to customers, or they don't speak the right same language. There is another aspect of agility which talks about how you form a team. Okay, the team that you're trying to form, you're trying to find a very well-rounded developers. You're trying to find a very well-rounded engineers who are not only apt in technical skills, which is their primary talent, but they are also coming with impeccable soft skills. Okay, like communication, being able to translate technical things into non-technical things, being able to talk language of the customers or the product owners. When that happens, you can comfortably let your customers talk directly to the developers. Okay, does that undermine the authority of product owners? It does not. Okay, which is this is one of the myths. So what you have is you really have a product owner here as well. Okay, but there are open channels. Okay, so there's an open channel between all three of them. I should have put that acceptance test driven development slide back here, but those of you, I did cover that, just not too far ago. So in which you do discussion first, then you do distill, which is when you're asking, you creating the test cases, then you do the development, and then you do demo. Okay, so at this point in time, at step 1 and 4, You have all three of them. You have the customer there, you have the product owner, you have the developer or the engineers who are actually going to work on that story. In both these steps, 1 and 4, this is discuss, and this is demo. Okay. So it makes a huge difference. So this direct channel, even if you consider a case which is more practical, you have a 10% communication error, you're still getting 90%, your customer is still getting 90% value, 90% of what they really intend to have in their product. Okay. Because there is a direct open channel, and you have there's a concept of personas as well, which I don't think I have covered yet. Maybe sometime soon. Okay, so every time as a programmer, I have a question about a functionality, I can go to product owner. It's not always necessary that product owner will have the answer right away. Okay, so a traditional way of doing is product owner will go to the customer by themselves without the presence of developer. They'll try to get that information, and then product owner will come back to you and tell you, this is what I found. Okay, agile way of looking at it is product owner and developer, they go to the customer together, they get that information together. There may be good questions that you may be asking as a programmer, which product owner may or may not be able to ask, and it can prove very critical for the success of that story. Okay, so it's important to understand that it's this communication, direct communication between customer and developer, is not undermining anyone's authority. It is not um, eliminating the need of product owner or product management. It is actually involving all three parties at the right time to get the right thing done in the most efficient way. Okay, so it's very easy to say this on paper, and it's very easily understood as well. I mean, it's not a difficult concept to grasp. But once you start doing this practically, you'll see it is a difficult, uncomfortable change if you're not used to it. Okay, a lot of times the customers, they don't want to get involved in in this kind of communication. Okay, which can be another challenge. But this is where the agile negotiation comes into play. And I think I've talked about this many times in our past sessions, that keep the customer engaged. It's very important. It's for their own good if they keep themselves engaged. All right. Now, so this is the basic concept. Now, how is Agile doing this already? Okay, so there are certain practices that we have looked at, that we know, where uh, this knowledge sharing is inherently happening. Okay. There's release and iteration planning. So, so release planning, as we know, okay, it's done by product management. It's against the product roadmap. You try to find the milestones, and you try to put your releases around those milestones. Okay, so how is knowledge sharing happening there? There's a group of product management who are deciding there. It is not one management sole authority who's doing that. It is a collaborative effort on the product management side. Also, people who are going to implement the development teams, they are also made aware of how the release looks like, how the release plan looks like, whether you're going to have 4 releases in a year or you're going to have a release every month. Okay, so those things are very important for the engineering team to know. Okay, because it can affect them indirectly. Okay, they may ask good questions if they are shown that plan, and it's possible that the product management may have to go and change that release plan based on that. Okay, same thing with iteration planning, product owner is involved, scrum master, developer, everyone is involved. This is same as scrum, sprint planning in scrum. So it's again a collaborative effort. Wherever we have collaborative effort, there is going to be a lot of knowledge sharing. Okay, and in traditional way of thinking, we talk about knowledge transfer, we talk about coordination. Okay, so those two things, sometimes they may be required, but knowledge sharing has a much more positive connotation. Okay, it is a two-way exchange instead of one-way exchange in knowledge transfer. Okay, same thing goes for coordination. Difference between coordination and collaboration. Okay, what else do we have in Agile? Okay, we have pair programming and pair rotation. Okay, so we talked about this in the XP session. Okay, the pair programming is, I love pair programming. I'm an architect. I do programming. I'll fill my days with doing programming, and I love pair programming. Okay, it's a hard concept to for some people to initially to adjust to, but once it works, it is miraculous. Okay, you cannot imagine how much quality you put in the at the code quality level just by doing pair programming. And same thing goes for pair rotation. Okay, so it is another way of having, again, another XP idea, where we have a concept of collective ownership of the code. There's no one person who's married to a particular module. Okay, anybody has authority and should have skills to be able to make changes or build on top of it. Okay, another very good way of doing knowledge sharing. On-site customer, okay, which is uh, self-explanatory. Okay, get the customer working close, in physical vicinity of people who are actually doing the development, who are doing the analysis. It's a very good way of seeing, keeping the customers engaged. The customers come to know what are the challenges that the development team faces, what are the challenges in implementation, how they're planning, how they're designing. And of course, the engineering team, product owners, they have quick access to the customer. Okay, you save time, you get quick and rapid feedback from the customer wherever needed. Daily stand-ups, okay, you wouldn't expect that to be a knowledge sharing exercise, but it is, because as a team, you come to know what everybody else is working in the team. Okay, you may not be directly affected by it, but it's important to understand what else is going on in the project. It will help you, it helps members to understand where their work is fitting in the big picture, which is a huge motivational factor too. Then we have the cross-functional teams. This is pretty common these days. You have teams which have varying skills. You have UI designers, you have UX designers, QA engineers, automation engineers, architects, designers, backend programmers, database expert. Okay. So it's just because you're working closely with those varying skill set, resources which have varying skill sets, you learn from each other. You learn how somebody who's working in the on the back end side, working closely with the UI engineer, would help them understand how the technology on the UI side works. Okay, and vice versa. Okay, which is why Agile is very particular about having small teams. If you have small teams, you have there's easy it's easy to find team chemistry. It's easy to find the right person who's working on the right person who is required to solve a problem, to work on a particular story. Okay, then we have retrospective, which is another one of the ceremonies that we talked about in Scrum. On a regular basis, the team comes together, finds out what they have been what they should start doing, what they should stop doing, and what should they continue doing. Okay, another very good way of making sure uh, that everyone is on the same page, and most importantly, learning from each other's mistake. Okay, it's possible that somebody made a mistake or followed something that they weren't they were not sure, or they learned something. It is a very good time to learn from that. That if a particular practice or a particular technique, a particular design pattern worked for one of the team members, when you do retrospective, you'll show it as something that we should start doing, and everybody in the team would learn from that. Okay, so these are some of the big things in Agile on knowledge sharing. And remember the concept that you're trying to make sure that the communication has least noise possible. That is when you'll be most efficient, the team would be most effective, and the customer will get the most value out of the whole development that we are doing. Okay, so I see that there are a few questions. Okay, one of them is about pair programming. So pair programming is one person, two engineers doing programming together, one person actually working on the keyboard writing the program, and the second engine is reviewing as the program is being written. Okay, I hope that answers that question. Okay, how does iteration planning help knowledge sharing? Well, iteration planning is sprint planning. If you're familiar, Scrum. Okay, so if you have an iteration of, let's say, 3 weeks, you'll pop out stories from the product backlog that are top priority, that are understood by the team, that are prioritized by the product owner. In that whole process, you will also have to understand the stories. Okay, so you'll have to drive clarity, make sure you understand the acceptance criteria. In the process of doing all that, as a group, everyone would learn about the functional side of the story. Not only that, the product owner may also learn how the design is there on the technical side, which will also be useful in future. Same thing goes for estimation. As a part of sprint planning, you have to do estimation as well, which is also a collaborative exercise in Agile. So multiple people doing estimation, your estimates are getting reviewed, they are relative in the process. If there are any doubts, you're talking to product owner, you're driving more clarity. Wherever you're driving more clarity, you're becoming smarter, gaining knowledge. Okay, let's quickly look at some of the let's test our knowledge now. Okay, so I want you all, there are 3 questions. You can go ahead, read the question, and send me your answer. You can either use the questions box or the chat box. Okay, I am getting answers. I am a little bit surprised that there are quite a varying response for a simple question like this. Okay, the correct answer is C. So, which of the following is not an agile knowledge sharing practice. Okay, daily stand ups, they are definitely knowledge sharing. Retrospection, we just looked at. Having only analysts talk with the customer is something that is not a very good way of sharing knowledge. Okay, close collaboration with the customer is absolutely a very good way of sharing knowledge. Okay, so correct answer is C. Okay, any questions on the response for this answer? Yes. Okay, next question, please go ahead. Okay, so it seems like some of you took a longer time to respond, but I see that most of you got it right. The correct answer is A. Okay, an agile team is not sure if a particular technique will work for implementing a story. What should be their next step? Okay, so there are a lot of. I did try to make this a little bit harder, but I think most of you were able to grab onto it. So simulate same scenario and check if the solution may work is kind of vague. Okay, the solution may work, may not work. C is start implementing anyways, which is clearly wrong. Okay, D, try to find experts outside the team who may have some knowledge, some more knowledge, which is also kind of vague. They may have knowledge, they may not have knowledge. Um, not sure. It's the best answer of the options given here is to develop a prototype. Okay, so this is the feedback technique that we have been talking about, also somewhat similar to the spike, taking a risk-based spike, or taking a spike. um, we talked about spikes a few sessions ago in past. Okay, so correct answer is A. Okay, next question, this is the last one. Okay, the correct answer here is D. Sorry. Okay, the correct answer is D. I see that most of you got it right. Okay, so there is some information that is given here which may not be like, SaaS software. Doesn't really doesn't really affect the answer of this question. Okay, so the correct answer is D. All three are things that could have caused. Okay, and it's all related to knowledge sharing. Okay, all right. So before we adjourn, okay, reach out to me with using whichever channel you want. I do get a lot of requests from the LinkedIn. If you're sending me a request from there, would you please specify from where you came, you got in touch with me? That would really help me. Um, Also, I do conduct that ACP training, the Agile Certified Practitioner training for PMI, um, every month, once every month. So the next one is going to be on the 19th and 20th of April, and the price tag on that is $299 per head. You can go to this website, certschool.com. Agile classes should be easy to find. Okay, look at the webinar. Okay, so it's an online training. If you want, it's going to be very grilling for 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, 8 to 9 hours each day. They You learn a lot of good things. It's more like a workshop than just a training. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. I hope you learned something new today, and I hope to see you all after 2 weeks. Thank you. Bye bye.